Okay, let's get rolling for our message tonight. And today the question we are going to be wrestling with is the existence of God. Does God exist or does he not? By show of hands, who has ever doubted, pondered, or wondered about if God exists or not? Yeah, that's almost all of us. Like, we're a youth group, for instance. We're here live, it's a Wednesday night, but have you ever wondered if this is all a delusion of our mind? Yeah, absolutely. And my guess is we've all thought through if God actually exists or not. And we do two things. One of two things when these questions come up. Number one, we bury it deeper and we don't ask. And my belief is that this is the most unhelpful kind of response. And number two, we look it up online. And you need to understand, ChatGPT or Google does not have very good answers to these questions. But when we question God's existence, which is not inherently a bad thing, we need to investigate the truth. And today, I want to propose to you that Jesus and the way of Christianity is actually very deep, that goes much beyond a basic Sunday school answer. And I think, and my hope, is that you can come out of today making sense that God actually may exist. By show of hands, who has formed an opinion on this topic? Okay. Almost everyone. Very good. And today, I want to tell you right now, we're going to be evaluating this question with fairness. I cannot promise I will be unbiased because everyone has bias no matter where they're coming from because of their situation, social economic situation, their background, and whatnot. But I want to propose and I want to give you a fair case of seeing, is there actually a God who exists or not? So, I fundamentally believe that the very first question that we ask in life is there meaning in this world? Is there meaning to my life? And this is a question everyone thinks about. It has to cross your mind because we are humans and we are made to search and to look for meaning beyond ourselves. And at the end of the day, every person should be able to say yes. There has to be meaning in some way, shape, or form. But the very next question we ask is, who gives me this meaning? And the question of God's existence must come up because if God does exist, number one, he created you. Number two, he's over you. And number three, he's the one who may provide you with meaning. So for the sake of being on a journey to find meaning, we need to explore, is there evidence for God? And how can we look at the different ways that people view life? If we can figure out how the universe was created and the different views of how people were created, then this will give us the proper answer if there is really meaning on this earth or not. There are three prominent views that philosophers take when it comes to the question of God and revealing how the universe was created. Number one, necessity. We just had to happen. Number two, chance. We got super lucky. And number three, designer. We were designed by someone. So let's explore them. Let's look at necessity first. Necessity tells us that the universe has to be life permitting because it was necessary, so therefore it happened. Anyone who holds this view would be called a nihilist. Nihilism is because we are here, simply put, because there's no fundamental meaning behind life, and we don't have a choice about what we do because it's necessary, including the universe. For instance, all the qualities of how everything in this world, to the way that the air works, to the perfect strands of DNA that we have, is simply because it's necessary. But my belief is that this is the weakest of the three options, friends, because there's no reason or no evidence to suggest how everything came to be is from nothing. This becomes an empty philosophical guess with no fundamental backbone to it. But let's look at the second option that philosophers propose, which is chance. Chance tells us that we got the universe lottery, and this is often referred to as the Big Bang Theory. The theory is that we got very, 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 very lucky. In fact, it was a 1 in 70 million chance that our universe was created the right way at the right time on the first try. Someone who believes in the universe created by chance is what we would call a physicalist human world view. This means that there's no God, no inherent meaning to life except what you just need to make the most of what you have while you're here. Life at its best is a glorious accident, is what a physicalist would say. is the belief that a physicalist teaches that a person is an illusion, and when we die, we just cease to exist because there is simply nothing outside of this earth. The idea of how we got to where we are today, being a 1 in 70 million chance, is a weak option. It's something that's hard for me to personally put my faith in because the universe lottery is not as probable as you might think it is. But let's look at the last option, designer. Perhaps the way our universe got to where it is today because of somebody who divinely designed it. It seems to me that there's powerful evidence that there's a behind-the-scenes look of how someone could say the universe came to be because it was designed with someone who intended for it to be the way it is. For instance, what are the odds that our Earth is made in such a complex way that we can personally breathe in the right amount of air? That every individual's DNA coding is so complex that one human's DNA compiled into an entire book would take 67 years, 24 hours a day to read. But yet, it's made in the way that works. It's made in the way that we function. And if we look at the sky and the impression of how everything was designed, it was overwhelming, and it inevitably makes us ask, did someone design this? One who believes in this would be one who believes in transcendence. Transcendence is that there is someone who is over us in knowledge, power, and love, who created all things, giving meaning to anyone who seeks them. And Christianity claims that this person is God. The very first verse in the Bible, Genesis 1 verse 1, says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." You see, the beginning, we're told, is that God created us, and He is there with us. Psalm 19, verse 1 to 2 tells us the heavens proclaim the glory of God, the skies display His craftsmanship, day after day they continue to speak, night after night they make Him known. We see God designed the sky, and it proclaims and reveals His glory. We're told to not look any further because of the awesome God who reigns above us is there with us. Hebrews 3:4 explains God so beautifully, saying, "For every house has a builder, but the one who built everything is God." It's true, our houses were built by someone, but the one who built the entire house of this world is God. God, by definition, is the greatest being that exists, and He created everything. That's the definition. The idea that God is a personal being, He's the greatest of greats, the King of kings, and the Lord of lords. When I was growing up, truthfully, everything was about me. It was what was coming next for me. I was the biggest person in my own life. But that was until I started asking questions. And I asked, well, first, clearly something must have come before me. And I started to look at these beautiful places like the mountains or sunset at the lake. I grew up in the summers going to Christopher Lake, and I would see these sunsets and I would say, there has to be something beyond just myself. And then I asked, if you think about it, something in this world has to be greater than me. And the next thing we need to define is truth and faith. Faith is trusting something you have good reason to believe is true. And truth is, by objectivity standards, is something that is either true or false. For instance, I could say, I'm holding up an iPad right now. Is that true or not? Well, it's true. You can't tell me that it's not because you see me doing it right now. And growing up, for faith, I had faith that my grandma, I loved my grandma, and she was amazing. And I remember my grandma would send me a birthday card every single year. How did I know this? She just did. And when I would be close to my birthday, guess what I would look for in the mail? My grandma's birthday card. Would I know she did it every single year? And would I know that she would miss? No, she wouldn't miss because she would do it. But here's the funny thing. My grandma also lived away. So what that meant is I had faith, I had trust that my grandma would send me something in the mail every single year. When someone says that they have faith in God, friends, what they mean is they believe that God is real and He's there. And I believe that there's good factual and also experiential reasons to believe that a relational God exists, and this relational God made you exist. And Christianity is unique because it offers two forms of evidence, factual evidence and experiential evidence. And today, I want to present to you both forms of evidence. But let's begin with the factual. I want to give you some pieces of evidence proving God's existence. And the first is called the Kalam cosmological argument. If you're looking for a fancy word to bring home today, that is the one. And it's presented by a philosopher named William Lane Craig, and he tells us three different things, okay? Number one, whatever begins to exist has a cause. Number two, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. That's complicated, so let me explain this to you through dominoes. God's existence is like dominoes falling over. Imagine if we had flat dominoes on a table right now, okay? What would have to happen for these dominoes that are all in order for them to fall? We'd have to push them, that's right. And everything else is caused by that domino falling because that domino followed because that domino followed. And everything else will be set into motion. But what has to happen in order for those dominoes to fall? Something has to first move. And we are told that God is the first mover. If you think about it, in the beginning, something had to eternally first exist in order for everything else to exist. The question we must ask today is, who was the very first domino before the dominoes fell into existence? And God, Christianity proposes, is that first mover. Second piece of evidence is called intelligent design. As you think about it, our world is so complex. So think about the human body for one moment with me. Every human, science tells us right now that every human has 37 trillion cells of DNA coding inside of us. That is billions upon billions upon billions upon billions upon billions. So much that if we put it into a book, we couldn't even read it in our entire lifetime. These things are so complicated that there's no way the universe was created by accident or because it just had to happen. The person who created these things was an intelligent designer who was actually greater than these things himself, who put everything into this existence because he exactly knew how to do it. And I propose to you today that this person is God. But let's move to the last piece of evidence that is so profound, and it's called the argument of the moral lawgiver. Think with me for a moment, friends. Everyone, everywhere, has a sense that some things are right and some things are wrong. Is this true? Yes. For instance, you don't have to believe in God or be taught about Christianity to think about the following. Genocides are wrong. Torturing young children for fun is wrong. We know that love and justice are good. And these aren't just opinions, this is objective truth. But if there is no God, morality becomes personal preference, cultural agreement. But we both know people don't live this way. For instance, we don't say, it's my personal preference that children are not tortured. We write a line in the sand and we say, this is wrong. So my question today for us is, where does this moral law come from? Because we have a moral law and we need a moral law giver. And if God doesn't exist, objective morality is very, very hard, actually impossible to justify. If real right and real wrong do exist, there has to be a real source of what is being told what's wrong and what is right. And God is the moral lawgiver. Now, we know there is strong evidence to suggest that God does exist. But simply put, often we are more convinced of our personal experience. So I'm going to share from my own life. Growing up, I discounted God's existence. I'd pray, well, God, if you're there, turn on this lamp for me, or make this chair move. And what would happen? God wouldn't do that. But you see, this is not how God works. You see, God is not someone who seeks to be tested, friends. And he is not a genie in the bottle. He's the one who created us, loves us, and reveals himself in ways that are both radical and hidden today. When I was 16, I heard God's voice. And you need to understand this, is I'm a relatively well-educated man. I'm a logical and analytical thinker, and I think that my mental health is good, okay? So work with me on this. But when I was 16, the turning point in my life is a moment where God spoke to me verbally and said these two simple words: youth group, okay? Keep it in mind, I never grew up in a Christian home, right? And what happened in that moment was my life was radically changed. I walked into the doors of this very church when I was 16 and my life turned around. And now I've come to the moment where I didn't just come to this youth group, but I became one part of leading this youth group and being the pastor of this group today too. And I can tell you right now, that wasn't just by accident. That was God working. And I know this to be true. And I don't know about you, but when we look at how God works in the days, it seems like it's slow. But when we look at how God works in the years, it all comes together. And I can go on. I've seen God do miracles in people's lives. I've seen people healed miraculously without a physical explanation. People's lifestyles and attitudes flipped upside down because of what God has done. Protection in wild situations I probably should have died in. I've seen a lot happen. And I know, with the experience that I've had, is that God is no delusion to how I'm living today. I've arrived at the conclusion, for me, that God exists. But where is your investigation of the truth landed? I have two thoughts to leave with you today. Number one, continue to investigate and look for the evidence of God's existence. I can tell you that my investigation of the truth has landed with strong belief and trust in God's existence. But you need to personally consider this for yourself and investigate the truth. And being able to do this by your own free will to choose is so important. And I believe that this is exactly how God has designed you today. So continue to investigate that. And number two, look for the small ways of how God's working in your life. I want you to be intentional with something today. In our everyday life, we may not see how God is working, but take a moment and start looking. Because when you start looking, you may notice things that you have not noticed before. So I'm going to challenge you, be intentional to observe. Romans 1:19-21 tells us that they know the truth about God because He's made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see His invisible qualities, His eternal power, divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God. You see, when we look at this world, we can see God is there, and we have no excuse. And Hebrews 11:6 tells us it's impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to Him must believe God exists and that He rewards those who sincerely seek Him. Christianity tells us that the universe, which God made, is full of evidence towards people who point towards Him. That if we seek to come to God, that we believe He is there. Often we doubt God and we want to get Him to prove Himself to us. But I want to flip the question to you. Are you proving yourself to God? In the Chronicles of Narnia, famous books of series, Edmund tells his sister Lucy about Aslan, who's depicted to God. He says to Lucy, "Why doesn't God prove Himself to me more?" And his little sister Lucy has this amazing response, and it's changed the way that I view things, actually. She says, "Well, Edmund, you're asking the wrong question. Why don't we prove ourselves to Him more?" And I think that this is the posture. That if God is really real, we can come with it a lot of evidence, but you will continue to doubt. You will continue to yell yourself out to Him to say, "Prove yourself to me, God," when He's been doing that your entire life. I've sat with people for years who struggle and wonder about the existence of God. But I want to do this today to you. Switch the question on your head and say, "God, how can I prove myself to you?" How is it okay that we say, "God, prove yourself to me" all the time, but the one who's created you and loves you and cares for you, why don't we do the same for Him? Especially when we can come with good evidence and know that He really does exist. But this comes back to your choice. There's a God out there who loves you, who knows you by name, and He cares for you today. So as you listen to this, seek out God, and you may be surprised by what you find.